I think at the end of the day, if you don't take care of yourself and if you don't take care of the people that you serve, then you cannot serve your campus community. You cannot serve your city, your town, no matter where you are, or no matter what business you're in, or no matter what field you study. You have to really, I think it's all about caring for those that you serve. And that's the bottom line.
In prevention, we are all leaders. Whether you're leading a nationwide prevention initiative, facilitating statewide prevention community, you're a coalition coordinator, or a one-person shop, you are a prevention leader. How we show up and how we engage with others to create positive change takes all types of leadership. So sit back and enjoy these conversations with your fellow prevention leaders from across the globe who are sharing their lessons learned, best practices, and strategies for success.
All right, podcast listeners, my roots go back to campus law enforcement, and I'm excited to going back to have a conversation with the police chief from Indiana University in Bloomington, just down the road. But without further ado, Chief, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Really appreciate it, Dave.
All right, I've been looking forward to this. We connected on LinkedIn a long time ago, and just through that interaction, through seeing the comments, the engagement, and how you show up there really caught my attention, and couldn't wait for the chance to connect and talk and learn more about how you show up on your campus as well, both as an officer, as a chief, as a leader, and as a community member as well. So let's jump into it. Would you mind just sharing a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, things along those lines?
Sure, absolutely. I'm Jill Lees, and I am the chief of police of the IU Police Department in the Bloomington division. So I only handle the Big Ten campus here in Bloomington. We are a statewide agency, so we have chiefs that oversee and lead other campuses all around our state. I've been here about 3.5 years. Previously, I worked for the Plainfield Police Department in Indiana here, right behind the Indianapolis airport. I was hired a long time ago, back in 1995, worked 24 years at Plainfield PD before taking this role. During my time at Plainfield, I basically held every rank, almost every position except for investigations, or, I did not rise the ranks through the patrol side of the house. I was more of the support services branch, where I dabbled in many different specialties and jobs at a police department. I had a sign behind my desk at PPD that says, "No one knows what I do until I don't do it." And that couldn't be truer words. The chief that I had years ago gave me that sign because it's like, what does Jill do? Well, I was in charge of one of the main things I did was accreditation. We were a CALEA accredited agency, in charge of school resource officers, community engagement, hiring, recruiting, a lot of the different things that are working behind the scenes, such as property and evidence and other things that maybe don't fit in that patrol bucket or investigation. So I had everything else. But the really cool story about it is that I am a proud alum of Indiana University. And I was in our cadet program back in between 1993 and 1995. So here as a student, I joined our cadet program, went to the police academy here, and worked part-time on campus while I was a full-time student. So everybody knew at Plainfield PD, I would never leave Plainfield PD except to go back to an opportunity at Indiana University. And, you always say, wow, wouldn't it be cool to be the chief someday? And then when it really happens, it's like you look back at your goals and think how hard you work to get to those goals. But when you say things out loud, sometimes you're like, wow, it actually does happen. So a lot of times I say things out loud that I really want to achieve and accomplish in my life. So that way, hopefully it comes to fruition, right? And before IU and everything, I grew up in Hammond, Indiana, up north. I'm a first generation college student, and got into law enforcement because I was able to, in high school, attend a state police career camp. And there were women there that were state troopers, that were local municipal police officers. And I thought, wow, there's women in law enforcement. I definitely that's when the light bulb turned on and said, this is the job I really wanted to have. So a teacher saw potential in me and thought it'd be a great idea if I went to the state police career camp. So I know that's like a lot to unpack initially, but I kind of started from where I'm at now and kind of how I got here. And a lot of times, I always say, wow, you can do what you want to do, because I never even thought I was going to go to college at that point. So to be able to do all the things I've done in my career, I'm very fortunate and very blessed, and I worked really hard to get there.
Okay, so yes, a lot we could unpack there. I think that would be a whole nother podcast series. But what I heard is a teacher saw something in you, suggested that you go to the career fair. There you saw the troopers, the female troopers, that then inspired you and gave you hope and direction in your life. The impacts, just some might say those minor things had, but then that was all you needed to put in the work and go. And now what we can probably unpack a little bit too is those quote small things, and now the impact you're having on not just the field of law enforcement, but the students' lives, the community, the campus as well. That ripple effect right there. Oh, my mind is just going and spinning all different ways. That is awesome. That is just really, really cool.
I think the best part of the whole story is that my mentor from the Indiana State Police, I just got to hug her on Tuesday. I mean, she has cheered me on through my whole entire career and helped support me. And I think that is so important, to have a mentor, no matter what job, career field that you go into, is to have someone that you can call to talk to, someone there for support. And she helped pave the way for me, because women in law enforcement had a little bit more difficult path years and years ago. And she is a major with the Indiana State Police and was there as a brand new trooper when I went through the police camp years ago. But yes, I'll never forget, I was just sitting in class and the teacher called me to his desk, and I thought, here, what did I do now? And I was a student athlete, and he just said, hey, I'm a member of a service club, and we have these opportunities to send students to camp every year. And I think you'd really like this. And I'll never forget that. I mean, he is the reason I'm here today.
Oh, that warms my heart. It does. That does. And I know there are stories like that out there across the globe. I love it. But now you've made it kind of, we'll call it back to your roots as well, back to IU. Tell me a little bit about the department. Now, granted, I come from campus law enforcement, but a lot of the listeners are prevention professionals that might not know the intricacies, the differences between a city or county sheriff and university police. So can you unpack IUPD?
Sure, absolutely. I'd like to start off with our mission statement, because that really sets the tone, and it sets every officer's reason of why and what we do here on campus. So the Indiana University Police Department creates a safe environment through respectful, fair and impartial policing and community engagement. So we're here, number one priority is to keep our campus safe. That obviously we're going to interact in a way that's very respectful and non-biased, because we have people from all over the world with such a different, unique perspective. And that cultural awareness is so important for our officers to have. And then we're also going to engage our community. It's so important to be able to reach out and to have a conversation with students and have a conversation about anything, and I think that's the difference between, when you're policing a municipality, you're dealing with all different facets of a city life, right? City, county, state. But in the university, you're really set on that, 18 to 21-year-old population, the grad students, you have faculty, visitors, staff, because you have the sporting events. So it is very, very unique. And we, as a police department, are bound by the federal Jean Cleary Act to ensure that we are correctly reporting our crimes and our daily crime log. We're sending out emergency notices. We're letting students know of, crime notices that happen on campus that rise to that level. And we just sent out a public safety advisory about, locking your bicycles, because we've had stolen bicycles already this school year. That just seems to happen. So we're policing the same way as far as the nuts and bolts of what a city officer would do. But the luxury and the resources we have is all of our campus partners and how we can connect students with sometimes immediate services to really help them through this, transitional part of their life, because many of them have never been away from home, or many of them come from around the world. So it's a really caring, patient environment. And I really feel like our officers do a great job with that, but they are pulled in many directions of, sporting events versus activities at residence halls versus Greek lights versus just your regular routine patrols. So there's a lot of variety here and a lot of energy. And that's why I really love working here.
Yes, indeed. And one of the things that I loved about patrolling on campus was just opportunities around every corner, opportunities to engage with students in a positive manner, not in an enforcement setting, and opportunities to collaborate with those campus partners as well. What are some of those opportunities or those collaborations that y'all have going on?
Well, I think most importantly, we have the most unique program in the country. We are the only institution of higher ed that has a cadet program where it's a 2-year cohort where full-time students can actually learn and become police officers and serve our campus community as a part-time police officer after they graduate our police academy. So not only do we provide the training, we also provide them experience. So I look at that as a very important opportunity for students to talk to other students and to be on the same wavelength. Those students are the ones patrolling our residence halls. They are obviously at sporting events and welcome week and different situations where students would feel comfortable talking to other students. And they look exactly like me. They're wearing the same uniform. You may not know, are they full-time, part-time, but they are out there and they can really identify with some of the same struggles. They can be, more on the same wavelength because they are also students at this time.
Um, I get that. Yes, that was something that I felt when I first started because I went to school at Eastern Illinois University, where I then later became an officer, and so I felt like I knew the lay of the land from a student's perspective right out of the gate, and yeah, that definitely influenced how I patrolled, how I interacted with students as well. Yeah. Now, when it comes to policing on a campus or within the campus community, you know, being a university police officer, it's a little unique. There's a lot of unique intricacies about policing or university police when you compare that to a municipality. What are some of those other sort of
I think a
unique
unique difference
differences?
that I see almost every day is current events. So current events that happen here in Indiana, United States, or even around the world truly affect colleges and universities. And in a city setting, you may not see people talking about different topics every single day. But here, we do have students that gather for climate change or for Ukraine or social issues, and we're always cognizant to allow our students, and not infringe on their First Amendment right to free speech. So we support that. We help enhance, their experience to doing so. And that's something that's obviously very unique from a city because many times, the small suburb that I worked in, you didn't see a daily protest of some nature. But it seems like, college campuses, when you see something happen all the way around the globe, how will this affect Bloomington, Indiana? And so a lot of times I really have to be ahead of topics or really watch the pulse of the community and global events to ensure that we are protecting our campus population the way we need to, and also enriching what their intentions are to express their freedom of speech. So that's just one example. Another example is obviously working very closely with our campus partners, such as the care team that we have here on campus. So we all sit around the table once a week with a list of students that we need to connect to resources. Maybe one department came into contact with them, whether it be student affairs, the halls of residence, disability services, international services. But we all sit and deconflict that to see how we all can help provide that student the best service and support that they need to continue on with their success with their schoolwork and to ensure that we can maybe help remedy some of the situations they're in. Because that's one of the things IUPD does come into contact with students that have, experienced mental crisis. Maybe they're experiencing or been diagnosed with a mental illness. So there's a lot of things that we come into contact with that we're very patient and caring, and we need to be able to communicate to our campus partners instead of working in silos where we would never want a student to fall through the cracks. So I really feel like our university does a fantastic job with the collaboration to ensure that they use us as a resource to help check on students, and that we can then provide that information back of, we're not the, prevention or counseling professionals. We want them to create the support plan in place that we can help just support their plan. One unique thing that we do is we go off campus to check on our students that live off campus. Not everybody lives on campus, and it's so important that we show up to check on our students off campus, because then we can then provide that information back to our student affairs and everything gets translated correctly. We work very closely with the city, but this is just a piece of how we can better serve our population that may not live on campus.
Student-centered, people-centered, and caring. But then also what I'm hearing too is y'all just are living that together is better, and together you are stronger. Like, you are living examples of that.
Absolutely. And to give you another example of that, I spent an hour and a half or 2 hours Tuesday night at a frat house here on campus because they want to build a relationship with IUPD. And I would rather do that. I wish we could do it with every single fraternity and sorority, every student organization, or every residence halls, because that way people aren't, if we have to come because there's a fire alarm, people aren't unnerved, right? They aren't anxious. It's the night shift sergeant. I met him last week. This is what they expect of us, so we had a great talk. And I think it really lowered everybody's anxiety of, if the cops show up at the fraternity, what do we do? So anytime we can get in front of our students and really build that relationship, that is so important. That will pay off dividends this academic year. But that is the biggest challenge for working at a city municipality is I can go down Main Street and tell you who lives at every house because they've lived there for 30 years. Where here, everybody is transitioning through our university roughly every 4 or 5 years, unless they stay for graduate school. And just when you get used to that student body government president and their cabinet, then, they graduate and the next group comes in. And so we're always constantly building relationships. And the foundation of trust in those relationships are very vital to our success and our credibility.
I'm glad you went there because I was going to ask next about keeping a pulse on the community, even though that community is changing every year. It's different students coming in, different students leaving, that turnover, just that nonstop game of reaching out, engaging, meeting the students where they are and building those relationships. But you beat me to it. You also reminded me of a fun little story. So we had night assistants like RAs, but they would sit in the lobbies of the residence halls overnight. They had radios. We also could listen to their radio frequency so we could talk to them. And I was on foot patrol, midnight shift. I had to use the restroom. So I just went into the closest residence hall lobby to go use the restroom. And next thing you know, I hear on their night assistant channel, supervisor, I need you to come to my residence hall. The cops are here. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure what's going on. I just want to use the restroom. It's okay. It's not a big deal that an officer walked in your building. But we didn't have that relationship. We didn't have that trust built yet.
Exactly. That's so important that, our officers, anytime they go to the residence halls, they go straight up to the center desk, introduce themselves, tell them why they're here, ask them for assistance. You've got to have that dialogue. And I think the residential staff, those are students many times as well. So you're constantly trying to build relationships with that team because that changes every year. So, we do the very best that we can to be able to sit down and talk with someone. And, luckily we have the time to do so. if you work in a big city or even, good suburban size city, you may not have the time to just sit down and talk with people because you're going call to call or you have different responsibilities or whatever the case may be. So it's so important that we spend time with our students. And if I didn't get out from behind this desk, I would never be able to do that. Like, I'll go to the student union and I'm like, I just want to come here most days and just walk around and talk to people. And what is comforting to me is when a student will walk up to me and say, "Hey, you're the chief, right?" I mean, when I was in college, I would have never had the nerve to go up to and just introduce myself to the chief. But I've tried to really get my name out there because I look at myself as a huge resource and mentor for our students that I'm always constantly recruiting for that cadet program. And I want them to feel comfortable to talk about, whether it's good things, bad things, issues. And when I'm walking around campus and I see families and I introduce myself or, people just come up and ask for directions, that's just a great way to make that connection and to build that relationship. And people are so appreciative of that. And I've received so many wonderful comments about how helpful our officers were during our move-in week that we just had about a week and a half ago, because it's just so important that, that's a stressful time dropping your child off for college and trying to figure out where you're going. And I think Indiana University does a great job of the check-in point and how you go from there. But our officers are obviously assisting with traffic and other questions. And I've received nothing but positive comments, not one complaint. And I would have never expected one because everybody does such a great job to help our students.
Have you listened to any past episodes where I talked about my GOT method for patrolling that I brought back from my Iraq deployment?
I have not. I apologize.
Okay, I didn't think. Oh, no. So you are doing it. So in Iraq, we called it the GOT method. So get out of the truck, get out and go engage the local civilian population, build those relationships. So I brought that back when I was patrolling on campus, get out of the squad and get out and go meet the students where they are. And that's what you're doing. Just, you said, you can't do that from your office, from behind that desk. You've got to get out and go to the students where they're at. So yeah, GOT method, it works. Got to go to them.
Absolutely. And I even try to go a step further of trying to come out on night shift twice a month to really meet with our officers that are always forgotten on night shift, but also students are in class most of the day. I mean, I can go over and see students at lunchtime or before class, but you see them walking around campus. But at nighttime is when they really have downtime. They're more engaged into social events. And so I like to get out and ride along with officers or drive around myself and talk to students in that forum as well, because we've discussed one of my sayings. I have a lot of sayings and favorite words, but one of them is you must be present to win. And you really need to engage with the students, at just different times. And our night shift officers do a great job of keeping campus safe at night, but it doesn't do me any good if I never see the nighttime along with them. So it really, I'm big on servant leadership, and I wouldn't ask anybody to do anything I would not do. And so I'll put a baseball cap on and try to blend in at night and, just hang out. And we are a very family-oriented department where if I come to night shift, they have night shift dinners. I mean, they sit down together like a family and eat dinner. And if you do that, that is only, to me, the best way to really bond with your shift mates, have one mission in mind. But, I think that's just so important. And I'm always happy to eat dinner with them when I can.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's where I wanted to go next. We talked about the uniqueness of policing on a college campus, but then you're right there already starting to talk about the unique leadership approach as well for being the chief. And I love it, getting out on patrol, midnight shift with those officers, the dinners, and you must be present to win. So I can tell just through our conversations, like you're very intentional about how you show up as a person and as a leader. What insights or lessons do you have to offer us about showing up, about that unique approach to leadership?
I think there are many facets of leadership and many successes of how you do certain things. But for me, I have never once changed who I am. I show up as my true and authentic self. I worked with a very close colleague of mine at my previous agency who he was a reserve officer for many, many years, and he and I were neighbors and very close, and we still are to this day. And one time after I left and came here, he's like, looking back, you have never, ever changed. And sometimes you see leaders change that they don't remember where they came from, and sometimes not fault of their own. They get so wrapped up in all the admin stuff they have to do. But he always said to me, you've always been the same person. And I really took that as a huge compliment because I am who I am. And that's how, if you build relationships on who you are, those are even strong. And I'm also, humility is a big part of leadership, where I don't know everything. I came in here knowing what I knew as a cadet, which that things have changed years and years ago, but I had added value from all the years of experience that I had as a police administrator. I needed to get back into the university mindset. And I also needed to be helped, so I had to basically, hey, I'm the chief, but I don't know what I'm doing. What I did find is police admin work is the same everywhere. I just sat down at a desk and started working, and it all worked out. But you really have to rely on your staff to assist you. You have to go to them and really be open about what you need, and also empower them to make their own decisions, because you've hired them to do that job. So I came in and I remember presenting a whole bunch of core values that are my personal core values and all of that. But I just walked in and was like, there were still people here from when I was a cadet years and years ago. So I was like, hi, I'm back, Um, but there again, you really have to rely on that team concept. You have to understand all of the diverse perspectives that you're getting in to filter out, making decisions. But as a leader, I just look at it like, hey, somebody's got to be in charge, and they picked me, but I'm here to help. I'm here to help, to be with you, to have an open door policy. And I recently polled all of our officers this summer of, what do you like best about working with me, and what do you find most challenging? And overwhelming, the best that they like to work with me is that I have an open door policy, that I truly mean it. And if I'm not here, I'm accessible by phone, email, text, always want to be available to give advice, not people just jumping the chain of command, but to really have some really good career counseling, conversations, and other things that, maybe I can dispel rumors if they just ask me the questions they want to ask me. And obviously what they found most challenging overwhelmingly was that I'm too busy. And there is only one of me. And I think one of the biggest weaknesses I've had as a young leader back in the early 2000s was saying no and boundaries. And I still feel probably I'm not the best at it, because if I can do something for you, I will. And I think that creates a better culture, a better team. I mean, think about, I came in and they say it takes a good 6 to 8 years to create a culture in an agency. And I just hit the ground running, and I work tirelessly. I have lots of energy, and it's unfortunate they say I'm too busy, because I think they want to see more of me. I wish there was more of me to go around on night shift, but I have to work within my own personal, life as well. So I think that's just a little, if you have any follow-up questions on that, but I just think that is what's most important to me here.
Mm-hmm. I just want to give a little nod of the hat, a head tilt, just the fact that the bravery, being courageous enough to ask each individual officer what they don't like about working with, like opening yourself up, that level of vulnerability takes courage. And I can only imagine the impact that had on the trust that you're building with each individual officer as well. Kudos.
Well, thank you.
That I see that and I feel that. That is solid.
So to give proper credit, that piece, when I went to the FBI National Academy, one of our instructors said, as part of I had a leadership course, said, go back to your team and say, what do you like best working with me? But then what do you find most challenging? It's not the what don't you like maybe, but what is most challenging? Is it I don't listen? Is it I don't send enough emails or communicate or, whatever. It just, that question makes it, to where don't ask if you don't want to know. And they know, I mean, you should see the things that I'm told, and whether it's good, bad, or otherwise, feedback, critical type feedback or positive, hey, I'm here to listen, because if I don't know, I can't help change things. I can't help do things. And I got some great ideas from young officers, just having a one-on-one. My purpose was to have a state interview we focus so much on recruitment, but we don't focus on that retention piece of, now that you're here, what do you like? What do you don't like? What's the best part of your job? What do you want to change? And I think that's really important.
Well, that's where I was going next. You brought up culture, and I know my listeners have heard me just drive it home that culture is the strategy. And what are some of the other things that you're doing at that department level to help foster and create that culture change? You mentioned, of course, trust, relationships, the stay in interviews as well. But what are some other things that you're doing to really foster that culture?
So if I could talk first on a statewide level, we really have a lot of initiatives that are really, we are just not IUPD Bloomington. We have 7 campuses and 2 satellites, so 9 different locations around the state that we all need to bring on the same page. So we're trying to get, we're working on the campus law enforcement accreditation so we can all be accredited, which will help us with sound policies and procedures. We also have, a statewide training, public safety education unit, which is very important to ensure that we have the highest quality of training, a statewide recruitment effort to have the highest quality of recruits, and a process to ensure that we're selecting the people with the right mindset here for campus law enforcement. We want to have those that want to serve our community work with us. So at the statewide level, we're doing a lot of great initiatives to really bring the culture of the whole agency to, I've always felt like we've been a very, very progressive department on many fronts, but then we definitely want to continually improve. And I think one of the greatest things for the culture for a university is that we have our written directives online for people to read. So if they want to see what is our pursuit policy, what is our use of force policy, we have a police data initiative online as well that's very transparent to have how many instances of use of force we have, and what our community engagement looks like, where we're going and what we're doing. So we do so many things at a statewide level that, as the chief, it's my job then to really ensure that we know the why we're doing all of those things, and making sure that all fits in with what we're trying to do here, in Bloomington. So it's a lot of communication. It's a lot of answering questions. And that's why it's important for me to engage with officers, to keep them updated on some of the different initiatives that we're working on, the progress, and to pass along that important information to ensure that I'm transparent as well.
Marvelous. Now, I think I remember you saying something about a 30 by 30 initiative that y'all are working on. What's that?
I'm very proud of that. So the 30 by 30 initiative is a pledge that we've taken. It came out of NYU and very supported by NALI, which is a women in executive leadership organization. And it is a initiative to hire 30% women by 2030. And it's not just pounding the pavement to bring women into our agency, but it's having listening sessions with women all around our statewide agency to discuss, different positives or negatives, or, what we'd like to see in policy, because it's creating that culture to bring more women in and then retain them. And then to then promote women in law enforcement, because there's only about nationwide 12% of women in law enforcement agencies, but only 3% of them are at higher executive levels. So we're not seeing a lot of women wanting to come into law enforcement, but if they do, they're maybe not getting promoted or not putting in for promotions. And so we definitely want to create that culture and have the supportive written directives to enhance and ensure that we support women that we hire at our agency.
Mm-hmm. So, listeners, did you hear all that? Couple takeaways up until this point for y'all. First, go have conversations with your officers. They want to talk to you. They want to get to know you. They want to build relationships. Just literally just go have a conversation. But then also, if you're looking for a conversation entry point, the 30 by 30 initiative, go see if your department's involved, if they've made that pledge as well. Maybe you know some folks that could be a part of those listening sessions even. So there's just another opportunity for y'all to engage with your local campus law enforcement as well. Now, one of the things that really has stood out to me just through engaging with you on LinkedIn is your commitment to wellness, both individually and for your officers, taking care of your troops, the Army, COVID rain, the good old Army saying, take care of your troops. What are y'all doing there when it comes to officer wellness?
Officer wellness is really important. We have a statewide officer wellness team. We have supportive policies that allow our officers to work out on duty. And it is so important that we take care of ourselves, because if we don't pour into our own bucket, how can we expect to serve our campus community? And you see this across the country now, how much wellness has come to the forefront. On average, there are double the amount of law enforcement suicides than there are of those killed in the line of duty each year, which is very, very sad. If people would just talk, if people would just reach out, if people would take care of themselves. And so being a police officer is very hard, working night shifts very hard. All of the things that come with that are very hard. The traumatic experiences we see, everything we deal with. And it is so important that we recognize when someone's not themselves and maybe they're not feeling right. You have to have your head in the game to do this job, to do it properly. Otherwise, bad things could happen, both to people in the community or the officer themselves. So wellness is really a high priority. We want our officers to get their sleep, to eat right, to work out, to really have a good work-life balance as best that we can. And that's something that's just not said. We try to really, really, make that the huge priority, because otherwise that's when you have a lot of issues, right? And as the chief, I have to really make sure that I take care of myself and set that tone and have conversations with people about wellness. And so I'm very fortunate to be connected to officers that are very highly credentialed in this field, that I'm always passing along information to our wellness team. And I think one of the tangible things we see beside working out and having different informational sessions is that we hired a full-time social worker for our department. And not only was he hired to serve our students and be a very good victims advocate, but also to serve our own agency as well. And we've kept him busy this summer because there weren't students on campus, but I'm like, okay, now you're going to get in a room with a bunch of cops. Here you go. But I talked to him yesterday and he said, I love it. He said, I can't see myself anywhere else. And we have roped him in every facet of things that we do. And if we could use it different places, we do. And I think that is such a huge benefit to our campus community. But again, we cannot serve our campus community to 100% if we're not 100%. And you can go into the long list of police officers who don't have the longest lifespan as normal people, or, divorce, alcohol issues, financial issues, the sleep, not taking care of themselves nutritionally. So, there's just so many pitfalls to this job that if you really take care of yourself, that's when you can really be fulfilled at what you do.
You can be at your best, bring your A game.
And I have to every single day. If I don't, that's noticed. And so one of the big words I have is consistency, that I have to be consistent. You can't come into work in a bad mood or not feeling well, or, whatever the case may be. It's very difficult, but you always have to be on that A game, like you said.
Absolutely. And even just as a leader, like you said, most folks, they don't necessarily talk openly about wellness and all that 8 dimensions of wellness, and you being intentional about having that conversation, keeping that at the forefront plays an impact both in officer wellness, of course, but also I see that helping shape that positive culture that you're working towards as well. The intentionality behind wellness is also another way of you as a leader communicating, hey, I care about you. I care about you. Yeah, I like it. Oh, I could talk about wellness for days and days and days, but we're getting close to the end. There's still a few things I wanted to touch on while I've got you on the line. And one being community policing. You know, you'd said, everything that y'all do is online, open to the public, and you'd shared your community policing framework, the plan. And there are a couple things that really just caught my eye and I just wanted to know more about. And the first being, highlighting equity, diversity, and then also your community advisory board. Can you kind of unpack those for us, please?
Sure, absolutely. So it's important to us to ensure that we are connecting and engaging our students, that have diverse student organizations. And again, really getting out there. We understand that everyone has a different view and experience of law enforcement, but we want people and students to know that we are here for you when you need us. And there again, that community engagement piece with our Engagement Inclusion Officer Program or EIO program is very important to ensure that people know what we're about and what we do. So that's piece number one. And then that does fit into the Chief's Community Advisory Board. This is an advisory board that I have a monthly meeting during the academic year where I have a diverse group of people sitting around the table that can ask me questions, that can discuss what has happened to that point in the semester, that I can pass on information about, hey, we're recruiting cadets or we need full-time officers. And, we're trying to create a diverse department that looks and represents the student population, but that's very difficult. Just even hiring people is very difficult. So that board is very instrumental in a lot of times driving different policies or mindsets or what things that they would like to see on campus. Because through the Chief's Community Advisory Board, many of those members last year were put together to create a commission on policy, hiring, and training for IUPD, another statewide initiative. But there were 19 recommendations that came out of there, and many of them involved our, staff on campus or students about whether it be traffic stops, whether it be how we respond to the odor of marijuana in a residence hall, whether, what kind of training do we need, like active bystandership training. So a lot of great recommendations came out of that document that was collaborative with, students and staff on campus.
I love that you mentioned that there's students involved in that as well. So often, sadly, you forget to hear the student's voice, their perspective as well when it comes to policies, when it comes to anything that could potentially impact the students as well.
Absolutely. And I think the most eye-opening thing for students was when we had them on a hiring board last year. They're like, well, how do I know if I'm going to pick a right person to be a police officer? And I'm like, you need to pick a good person. I'm kind of like, it's how do you explain that? Like the answers they'll give in an interview, you just kind of know because I've been doing this almost 30 years. But how do you explain that to a student? And when I debriefed with them afterwards, they couldn't believe. They're like, this person would be really good, but not this person. It's like to have them involved and saying, hey, you help pick the people that are serving this campus is even better. So looking for more collaborative partnerships in the future with that, but that really opened their eyes of, wow, you have such a job to pick and to ensure that this person's going to serve our population well. That's a heavy ask.
Listeners, are y'all taking notes on ideas, ways to collaborate with your local campus law enforcement as well? A lot of cool ideas are surfacing during this conversation. Oh, marvelous. Well, you'd started to mention training, and I know we had talked before that is one of the unique things about your department, about campus law enforcement too, is the training you have at your fingertips What all are you guys getting trained in on?
So we all have obviously basic first aid skills, which is so important because we have used CPR quite a bit on campus in different situations. So you always have to look at how do we physically take care of our campus. But then with that, we are trained in mental health first aid. We are trained in fair and impartial policing, procedural justice, cultural awareness, and then all the regular state mandates. But we really have a lot of training that is very relevant and very specific to campus law enforcement on, how we interact in a way that, best serves our community. And again, we're getting ready to all be trained through ABLE, which is active bystandership for law enforcement, that's come out of Georgetown Law. That was on one of the recommendations that came out of the commission, because it's so important to help recognize when officers, are about to make a mistake, or, to be able to intervene at any level. But I always tell officers, if you see me doing something, you need to let me, it doesn't matter what rank you are, you have to intervene. That peer intervention is so important. So that's coming up. We have not been trained in that yet, but so we do a lot of training, and I'm very proud to say that at the end of the year, we are well doubled, if not more, of our state mandates for the year.
Marvelous. And it just reminded me, so my wife is a pediatric ICU nurse, and their culture of when the shit's hitting the fan, for anybody in the room to be able to say, pause, we got to check this out real quick, something's up. Like that culture, that awareness can literally save lives.
Absolutely. And because of that pause, we have adopted the police executive research critical decision-making model, where it's hey, let's pause and let's go through all the steps of the model of gathering information, assessing, everything that comes in, making good decisions. And in the tenets of that is ensuring the sanctity of all life. It used to be hey, we're going to all go home at the end of our shift, but how do we make sure everyone does? How do we make sure that the outcome is not we're just rushing in like the old days? We can take that pause, assess the situation, and how we can best handle it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All comes back to culture, which you are intentionally fostering and shaping, not just with your policies, but with how you show up every day. And I'd pointed it out, but I got to point it out to the listeners as well, because this is just audio, but you wear your uniform to work every day, even as the chief. And I've worked for a couple different departments, interact with the departments, and oftentimes I would see chiefs in just plain clothes on the regular basis. And yeah, it makes a difference. It does. It does. How you show up every day. Yeah. I'm just taking us down a sidebar. Let's talk community engagement. So coming from the prevention perspective, we always want to collaborate. We want to engage. We want to partner with law enforcement. And I get asked a lot, how can I get law enforcement to the table? How can I collaborate with law enforcement? What are some strategies for engaging with law enforcement? What insights or wisdom could you share in that facet?
I think you have to have that really openness. When I was at Plainfield PD, I'd have people stop and visit me all the time and come to the police station, and it would be just really nice, I'd just go out in the lobby and say hi, and then they go on their way. And here, when you get here, it's like, I want this to be, a place where people can reach out. Right. So I've had lunch with students in my office. I've had students visit on the patio, hey, if you want to talk, just, create that messaging that goes out to say, hey, let's, partner, and let's, hey, we're going to have an open house, or, hey, why don't we meet here? And I think the more you engage with your community, the more that you feel that you can reach out and just pick up the phone. But many people don't feel that comfort to pick up the phone for their own local agencies, because they really don't know the name or the officer or have that relationship to, I just know I need to talk to officer so-and-so. But once you have that connection, then that makes it so much more easy. I feel like a lot of students do connect with me on LinkedIn or other platforms to ask questions. I do a lot of career counseling, like, hey, I'm a criminal justice student, and what do you think about this? Or, so I'm always willing to talk to students, always. And I think once you kind of get your feet wet and you follow through and do what you say you're going to do, then people realize. And now I have all of my colleagues that are like, well, you need to call Chief Lees and ask her, or you need to go visit her. So when others are a proponent for you and your agency and are supportive, I think that really helps open the door for more back and forth. Give the Greek house example from Tuesday night. They were like, this is really helpful. Well, guess what? We told them, spread the word to the other houses. I was sitting there with a representative from Greek, for fraternity and sorority life, that she's like, yeah, I see some ideas. Like, look, with other houses, we partner to play basketball, or we schedule a blood drive, or, just think of the possibilities you have. And all you have to do is just be open and be genuine on that you do really care about them in their house or them in their organization, and more invitations will follow.
So listeners, send an invitation. Just invite them. I know for me, I wanted to be involved. I would go to any event, any meeting if I was on shift or if I was freed up to. But there's so much happening on a college campus. It's hard to know about everything.
That's right.
And so just invite, and build those relationships. Yeah.
And I think we start off really good during Welcome Week. There's so many activities that engage our students that they see IUPD in a different light. Always work the new faculty orientation, because I'd like to be in front of the new faculty to welcome them to campus and find out more about where they're from, and to provide information of how IUPD can be a resource. We partner many times with our emergency management colleagues, because we're all under the public safety umbrella, and do different events. We've done student orientation all summer. So it's just getting out there and doing it, and not, just, and be, I guess the best way to say it would be just, that you want to do it too, and people can definitely tell if you want to be somewhere or not, so, our officers really do a great job of wanting to be with students. And, our officers ride bicycles too and walk, around the residence hall. So they have that time that they can interact with students.
Comes back. What's popping in my mind is one of your slogans: you must be present to win.
Yep.
They are present. They are accessible. You are present. You are accessible. Yeah. All right. Well, we've been talking for a long time. I could ask you questions for days and days and days, because I love this stuff. But I want to just bring it home with one final question for you. What would be one final just takeaway or piece of advice for our listeners? If you were to say, if you're going to remember one thing from this episode, remember this, what would it be?
Gosh, there's so many. We talked about so many different things. It's so hard. But I think at the end of the day, if you don't take care of yourself, and if you don't take care of the people that you serve, then you cannot serve your campus community. You cannot serve your city, your town, no matter where you are, or no matter what business you're in, or no matter what field you study. You have to really, I think it's all about caring for those that you serve. And that's the bottom line. And if you do, then they hopefully will go through well for you, right? They will serve in return, and they will do it at the highest level of expectations that you don't even have to share because of your actions.
Take care of yourself. Yes. And care. Marvelous. There have been so many words of wisdom, insights that you've shared. I think I need to replay this and just pull all those out and just have a nice summarized list as well. Y'all are doing great stuff there. You are doing amazing work as a servant leader, showing up, living by example, so that you can also lead by example. That first teacher, that trooper that set you on this career path may have changed your life, but in turn, you are changing so many others' lives as well. So thank you for being who you are and doing what you do.
That concludes this episode. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and share this episode with a friend before you leave. And we look forward to seeing you on social media, because prevention is better together. Together, we are stronger.